Hello and welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is the edition for July 26th, even though I have it as the wrong thing. Let's get it right here. All right. This is the episode for July 26, 2024. It's an open lines day, so whatever you want to talk about is what we'll talk about, and important for you to participate. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plant App, joined capably by Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plant App. And we're enjoying having him around today. He's going to be off next week, so meet up Patrick today. This is an event we do every Friday, talking about Plant App and low code. We get together, we talk about challenges and techniques and experiences, and hope that you'll bring something to show or ask a question. We record all these and put them out on YouTube, so that's youtube.com/plantandapp. We encourage you to subscribe to those. We post them usually within a day of when we have the event. We run this agenda. We stop and say a friendly hello, and then we'll go around the campfire with anything first call or anything you've submitted in advance. And then we'll look at some of our other areas, contributions to the shared Campfire website, which we have at least a couple of those today. We'll take a look at our community and feature requests, and there's at least one of those today. Sometimes we look at our low code playbook and talk about other things. After an hour or so, we'll go into our Afterglow segment. That's where we turn off the recording, raise a virtual adult beverage, and enjoy each other for a little bit longer. So do jump in, show and tell, engage with us. You can submit questions and topics in advance, either using this QR code or in the links that we'll put on the chat. No, it's in the links that are in the email to you. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As promised, we can start with first call. Anybody have something going on? A low code challenge or something interesting that you're working on? All right. If something occurs to you, jump in. I'm going to talk about a few things. We released version 1.26 a month ago, a little bit more than a month ago. There are a few known issues, and I'll just alert you to them. And if you have any questions, maybe we can talk about them. But um, as it stands at the moment, we have the export to Excel action is broken and something that we're working on. So if you rely on that, maybe it's a little early to get onto version 126. This isn't strictly a Plantinap thing, but there's a monitor servers task. I think I've mentioned this a time or two in the past, but DNN at 9/11 something introduced a monitor servers task, and this is something that runs every 5 minutes or so. It puts information into the log, and we noticed it slowing down our server. So if you haven't found and disabled that, as far as we know, this is only something that applies in a multi-server environment. So turning off the task has no negative consequence that we're aware of for a single server environment, and then it saves some CPU, saves some sluggishness. There's a known issue. This is an easy workaround thing, but if you're in workflows and you change the change the parameters of a workflow, now other things that use that workflow either need different inputs or different outputs, and those you might need to do a clear cache in order to see the changes that you've just completed in a workflow. So, so if you edit a workflow, change the inputs or the outputs, you might need to do a clear cache. As a developer, so long as you're logged in with a DNN user high enough rights to clear cache, it's a pretty simple thing. If you're not, if for example, if you're not super user, you might not have that, and then it might be a little confusing. So we're working to fix that. And then probably one of the most recent and a little bit significant might impact you is if you're some people use our listings to um, like you might have a filtering form and the form pushes information onto the query string to say, hey, I want to filter in this way. Um, our listing is we have a bug where the uh, working with the query string, it doesn't, if you are relying on that in a data source, for example, get parameter A off the query string, it doesn't flag the data source to rerun. So the end result is if you're using a filtering form in that way, that the filtering um, may not work. It may not just activate the filter of the listing. So those are the issues that I know to talk about that might impact you. If anybody has any questions about those or comments, we entertain those. Go. Patrick, did I miss anything?
Just to add to the last one, but just to clarify, the URL parameters for filtering via the columns, if you have a column enable for filtering, that does work. Though that's just the if you're trying to impact a listing by URL parameter in some other way, then that's what's not working right now.
Anyone at 126 and encounter any of these or happen not to encounter any of these?
I'm at 126 and I haven't encountered that yet, but a question, is it that a change in the query string parameter doesn't trigger the listing to repopulate? Is that what's going on?
Correct.
If you're doing it by way of JavaScript,
By way
right?
of JavaScript.
If you
Okay.
are and perhaps through some of our actions, I haven't really tested that. But for example, if you redirect to the page and cause a page refresh and the query string is different, the listing is going to initialize and you're going to get your
Yes.
filtering. But if actually I did this on something similar on Campfire here a little while ago. I did a contribution showing how to manipulate the query string, and if you're using this kind of JavaScript techniques, whoop, wrong one, of course. That's where you run into trouble. So this, if we click start phase one, we get phase one showing up into the query string. And so that's the JavaScript technique. And so we can add it and remove it. And that's happening. This is my filtering form. If I want to, I've got one here that says filter for user Dale. And for example, I am adding the filter dash first name parameter. That's what the listing is expecting to see for filtering, so it works. But if I had this in if the data source was picking up information off the query string, off the URL, changing it in this way through JavaScript. For example, if it was looking at the phase, that's where it would not work. So, make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. And what's the recommended workaround?
There is no immediate workaround for this.
Couldn't you just, in an action on that button, tell it to refresh the
You
listing?
could. Yeah, you could, but there's other places where we do this where you don't have that necessarily have that option. So yeah, but yes, if there's any way that you could just tell it to refresh, then yeah. Like if you're in JavaScript, you could update the URL and then run the JS for refreshing a listing, you could do that. But in many implementations, we've relied on the fact that the listing is watching the URL, and that's in this specific instance, that's not working. So
okay, cool, makes sense. I appreciate you explaining it.
All right. Anybody else encounter anything with 126, positive or negative? While you're thinking about that, I'll mention last time when we got into our Afterglow segment, we had, I think it was 5 users all editing a workflow or different workflows at the same time and saving. And the performance things that we were hoping to accomplish with these updates to in 126, where workflows used to take 5 to 10 seconds to save, now are practically instantaneous. And then when multiple users were saving workflows at the same time, previously it was a very high CPU event, and now it's and they can all still get instantaneous performance when saving. So it's definitely steps in the right direction. We're getting where we want to go, but it was a lot of changes to do it. It's going to be particularly noticeable by people with large systems. We've had some people with many, many workflows, and the more that you had, the worse that was before. So this instantaneous save mechanism is the bigger your system, the more helpful that is going to be. Bigger, the more content that you have in workflows and entities and things like that. Okay, moving on. Since we already had Campfire open, I'll mention a couple of contributions, and Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot in a minute. So this is our shared website. I think everyone here has access to it, but if you don't, let me know, and we'll make sure that you do. Mark did a contribution for show a page only after it fully loads. So this was an interesting technique. When you click on it, the page hides until it's fully loaded and then pops open. When I say hides, it's covered by but what was the technique that you used, Mark?
It's just covered with a div, and the div has a photo in it. And it could be a logo, and that's one of my logos, but obviously you'd use one of yours, whoever's using it. And it just it loads immediately, and it is covering up the rest of the page, which is loading in the background. And it's not very sophisticated. It doesn't know when the page is finished loading. You set that in milliseconds in advance. There was some JavaScript that was supposed to understand when the page was fully loaded, but in my experience, it didn't actually, it wasn't right. So I just simplified it to put milliseconds in there. And this is designed for some of us who are concerned or would prefer that the page loads cleanly so that the experience is nice. I've always had a little bit of difference of opinion of watching a page load different components at different times, and something popping in and then being pushed down by something that was above it that pushed it down as it loaded. So this just covers all that up.
Yep. Well, again, thanks for taking the time to share the technique that you use. I find that these, having them here makes it where, it's a nice library of things when you need it. If someone becomes bothered by that, that's a way to solve it. Last week we talked about execute actions asynchronously, and so I added a contribution to show the things that we were talking about. And so, for example, this we're running a report, and the report gets submitted, but the user is now able to continue to work with this screen and continue with it until the report becomes done. And let's see, and it is done. So it's just demonstrating that which we talked about. So if somebody wants to see asynchronous actions at work, you can take a look at this one. Um, Still going to stop, pause for a minute. If there's something that you want to talk about, it's a good time. Question you want to ask?
So Dale, this is Mark again. I just wanted to throw another plug for what you just looked at, because just this past week I went in there and pulled something out of the contribution, something that you did. The moment it's escaping which one it was, because I do it often. So I use that stuff, and I'm sure others do too. It's a very nice resource. And thank you for all the stuff that you put in there.
Well, luckily, thanks for that. Luckily I get paid to put stuff in there, but I appreciate the ones that you guys volunteer as well. So, yes, and I think I talked about it last time, but um, I'm trying to do this when I do a cafe now, to um, make sure that the same things that I'm demonstrating in cafe and spending an hour or two on, that they're there as examples too. So a couple weeks ago we did visualizations, bringing in data and doing uh, graphs of different kinds, and so this is another one that's out here. Some of these patterns are a little bit, um, there's some complexity to them. So being able to have concrete examples, how do I get from point A to point B, or at least how did somebody else do it, so that then you can uh, do your own variant on that. Anyway, I hate reinventing the wheel, so hopefully it serves that purpose. Okay. Since Jen is here, I will mention that Patrick, if you're in the general vicinity of where Patrick lives, you can stop in and he'll take you to breakfast.
Yes, Jen and I had a fun time this past Saturday having breakfast together, meeting each other in person for the first time ever.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Very fun.
Yes. I hope one of these years we'll get around to a user group meeting. I mean, the fact that we interact every week, and yet very few of us meet in person. It's nice when it's able to happen. Feature requests. Ben, this is yours. We have a feature request place on the website. You can post a request, and we dig into these as we try and figure out what next to do with the product. And so you you want to explain the case for auto login link? Are you able to do that?
I can try, but I'm traveling right now, so I don't know how well you're going to hear me.
Well, we hear you just fine, but if you can't see it, if it's difficult, don't
No,
be
it's okay.
dangerous. All right.
No, no, no. I'm not the one actually driving. I'm the passenger at the moment. Um, so yeah, basically with the auto login link, I'm trying to, well, I created, I should say, a multi-factor authentication. And one of the things that I noticed is that DNN has a feature that if, let's say, you are trying to access a page that's behind credentials, it will immediately send you over to the login page, but it will add a query string telling you where originally you were trying to go to. And once you successfully log in, the original login authentication module would then redirect you back to that page you came from. Um, we could basically do all of that except for the redirect right now, because the way the auto login link creation works, you have to specify the tab that you're going to, and you only offer two ways of specifying it. It's either through the path or the ID. And then the query strings have to be hard coded. So there's no way to dynamically send it the original page that was trying to be accessed.
Mm-hmm.
So
I totally agree with this because it would make it a lot easier. We do this, but that's through having a page that that is that is just the it's the auto login redirect page is what we call it. And basically you pass the return URL query string parameter along to that page, and then that page handles it, which is not ideal. I totally think that what I'm not I'm not discounting your request, because I think it would be easier to do it, but that's what we do.
yeah, I mean, yeah, while there's a way
Yeah,
around
right.
it,
Yeah.
the thing is that you're basically gonna have a situation where the page is blinking several
Mm.
times and loading several different things, because like
Yeah.
right now, like I said, I'm doing multi-factor authentication, so the person logs in through the login form that I created, but then it will redirect them to another page which does the MFA verification,
Mm-hmm.
which then sends them, you know, to use whatever the created auto login link is. But then, in order to do it, like you said, there's going to be then a third page that they'd have to go to where you'd pass a different type of query string where then it would handle that and then redirect them to the fourth page, which would be the original URL.
Yep.
If the auto create link could actually just accept a straight URL with whatever query string parameters are in it, and just say, this is the entire URL that I want you to go to once they authenticate, then it basically would take, two additional pages kind of like out of the system. And you just basically, as soon as they authenticate, it goes right to the page that they wanted to go to originally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I read this, I was kind of focusing on the technical and didn't recall this workaround that you guys both were just talking about. And I realized now that I've done the exact same thing, that I've got a login link, and I end up with a page that picks up that there is um, a pending redirect and gets them where they want to go. So essentially the exact same solution. So we all are finding our way around this, but it'd be nice to not have to find our way around it. Just as a reminder, you can hover the thumbs up and click it and add your vote to that if you want to on feature requests. And in case you don't know where the feature requests are, put that on the chat. Good one. And that also would if query string parameters, what I'm understanding you to say, query string parameters currently don't evaluate tokens. So you can hard code things, but you can't send tokenized things. Is that what you're?
I have not. Sorry, that's GPS talking in the background. I haven't tested that portion of it. I never used it. What I mean by hard coded is that the query string parameters themselves, you have to predefine them, at least the fields. I haven't tested to see if the values that you can pass can be tokenized or not, but every page that you go to could have potentially different query string parameters. So I'm not going to know ahead of time what page someone's going to go to and what parameters I need to pass. So that's what I mean by hard coded is, they have to be predefined at the time that you're creating that auto login link.
Okay, good. So that makes sense. Good one.
So yeah,
All
but
right.
so just to, I mean, And once again totally think this was worthy, but we have the token to get the entire query string. So that's what we do. We take the entire query string and we pass it along through all the actions, which does create a bunch of redirects, but does essentially they end up in the correct place with the correct parameters on the URL. So yeah, ideally, I think that it'd be much better just to have this ability to just define the entire where they go dynamically.
I voted for it.
Yep, I did too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Mark asks about community. So let's go off into community for a minute. I think I have, let's see if it's on the list here. We'll just go there. I obtained this question. This is the one you were asking about, right? Getting the SQL from a listing.
Yes, that's it.
So this was the question about being able to read the query, and you answered that there are some perhaps not very well documented or not inline documented. I think they're probably externally documented, that these are available. They're listings giving you access to the data, not to the query. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's not a direct answer to his question, but it's helpful.
I haven't looked it up, but Pat, we have one currently in the works that I believe would reveal the exact query. Is that correct, Patrick?
I'm
Let me go
not
find
sure.
it. I'm not certain either, so I'm going to look it up before I speak. But there is one that's that we are actively working on that is going to reveal a lot more tokens out of listings. Let me find it.
While you look for that, can I chime
Sure.
in?
Mm-hmm.
So I've needed to do this a few times, mainly because other I've had other reports that actually use the same exact query that a listing used, and I didn't want to have to recode that entire query string in my other report or whatever is running. So I wanted to basically reuse it, because the other thing too is, if for whatever reason I have to change that query string, or that SQL statement rather, then I'd have to replace it in multiple locations, and I'd have to remember they're in multiple locations. Whereas if I just share it, then I could just change it in like the action grid and then just pull that SQL query. So what I did is I actually created a token where all you do is you supply it the module ID of the action grid, and it pulls out the SQL source query, and then just returns that, and then you can use that elsewhere. So I'm gonna share that on this grid, on this question here, and then I'll throw it up in Campfire as well. I just haven't had an opportunity to do it just yet.
Ben, are you talking about a constant token?
Not a constant, no. It literally pulls out the data source of whatever action grid you're asking for.
Okay.
Hey, Ben, seeing as you're not driving, I think you could wrap that up before you get to your destination, buddy. Let's not be lazy here, okay?
A lot easier said than done when you're looking at a little tiny phone at the moment.
Okay, the one that I was thinking about, I don't think is going to give us exactly what this question was, but we are talking about returning about 10 different tokens, making these available within listings. So things like the current page, if you're on page 5 of your listings, that you'd be able to see in code that you're on a token that says current page, the page size, which would be the number of items on that page, the current sort by and whether it's ascending or descending, the search terms that are in the search box, the filter query string, which would be a query string, returns a query string format prefixed with the URL prefix defined in settings. So gives you access to the um, prefix that you would need if you're building a filtering form. The name of the values for a particular filter. So if you were filtering by name, you'd be able to get the values being filtered. The total number of results, total number of pages, and first result index, which I don't know what that one might be. But basically revealing a lot about what the current state of a listing is, and that still doesn't give access to the query. And thinking about it now, the query is, listings can have many data sources, so you can't just assume that there's a query involved. If it's a SQL data source, then there is a query involved. Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry, Dale, I'm sure there is because Ben has done it, but what about the way where we can go find the SQL? Like, can we look in the database, find the right place, and return the SQL that was used for a listing? Just trying to answer Roberto's question, that's all.
Right. I think I'm saying we don't publish and the the changes that we have going on aren't going to provide access to it, but sounds like Ben's going to put that out there for us. In any case, that what I was going to say is that work is currently done, and we have a phase called code review. That somebody taking a look at it, try to make sure it's done right, and we didn't break anything else. And so it's in the later stages of getting released as a hotfix for 126. So I would assume that we're going to see that in the next week or so as a hotfix.
Those are some really neat tokens there, Dale. And in particular, I heard, how many records it returned. And I know I have had to create a second SQL and just to count how many records my listing returned and put that down below. So those sound like very useful things.
Good. In addition to this action grid entry, and actually this is the spot where let's take a look at what listings does and the documentation. Let's see if it's out here.
Yeah, I wonder if you also made a contribution with these items in use.
So it looks like it's not documented in the documentation. The other thing, in addition to what you suggested here, which is good information, is that when you have a button on a listing, you can get a hold of the IDs, and that is inline documented. So we have a root button, and if we activate it for selection, you can see in the actions it says that we have this. You can get IDs comma delimited. So everything that was selected is the IDs comma delimited and the JSON array. IDs comma delimited is everything in the current everything in the listing. Oh, on all selected items. Okay, so I'm sorry. IDs comma delimited is all the items that were selected. So if you think about it, you might have a listing with 10 pages and you're paging through and selecting different items, and then you click the button at the end of that. Regardless of what page you're on or what search you have going on, this IDs comma delimited is a list of all the IDs that were selected. So that gives you, that's another way to access the things that are in the selected in the grid. So I think we need to my takeaway from this is that those things that were in this that you responded here, action grid entry, selected, updated, all these should be in our documentation in one place or the other, the inline or otherwise, so that we don't have to remember these magic words. There's another one we've talked about before, that the create list action, when done within a listing, if you don't tell it what list that you want, it will assume your current data source. So there's another magic action that's going on there. Let me see if I can find that and get it up on the screen here. This is not the official documentation. This is Dale's notes, so this is my way of referring to it. But list-based actions like list a JSON or create an Excel from a list. If you just don't fill in what list you're talking about, it means the current grid and its data. I'll put out a contribution for that one, and who knows? If we have a couple of minutes, maybe we can do that now. Anyone interested in seeing that one?
Yes, I think that came up one previous time on one of these sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I perked up and noticed that. I think I have definitely used it since then. It's a good one.
I think that this is actually the specific thing that might be broken with the in 126 right now. Well, there is a hotfix for it, but because with that create Excel action, Dale, I think that it's using the magic list that's broken. I think if you specify a list before that and then use that list name, it still works, but it's not specifying a list name in a listing. That part is what's So and Campfire is probably at 126, so it might not be
Exactly. Probably let's
yeah.
not let's not go there then.
Yeah, yeah.
You could watch me bang my head against the wall. All right.
And, oh yeah, and I think I wanted to point out you said at the beginning, I think that actually is published, that fix, I believe. I'll check to make sure, but don't see one yet. Okay.
I don't see it. No.
Okay.
Let's see. I have too much going on my screen. Got to move things out of the way to see stuff. I'm wondering if it's installable yet. I don't. No, I'm not going to try and install a hotfix before it's released. I'll just break stuff. Okay. Good. We've got about 15 minutes if there's something else you want to talk about. There's an interesting pattern that we in the interest of trying to document the kinds of things that people often want to do with Plant App. Like recently, we did a campfire on the visualizations, the chart JS stuff. The next one that I think that the next pattern we're going to attack is email digests and email notifications. Patrick and Bogdan have worked up a nice pattern for that, and I'm trying to assimilate it. But the idea is that you have some things going on your system, like for example, you're detecting changes to an entity, like somebody changes the mailing address of a contact, and you want to subscribe. You have users that are interested in, I want to know anytime something changes in the mailing address or something changes on a contact, so they subscribe to contact changes, and they might subscribe to other things. So the idea is a nice pattern to say, uh, how do you detect and store notifications, and then how do we deliver them the way that you want them? Do you want them immediately as they happen? Do you want to digest 3 times a day or once a day or once a week so that you can go back and review those? And so putting the user in control of how they receive notifications, and yet different ones for different users, but everybody gets notified eventually. So that's a pattern we're going to be attacking. I don't know, I guess I'll throw it out there. Have any of you done something similar with notifications?
Well, not yet.
And thinking about that pattern, Patrick, it also occurs to me that like we're talking about different delivery channels as well. So, for example, you might have email as one way that it gets delivered. Text could be another way that it gets delivered. Um, and then I'm thinking a lot of applications have you're browsing along in the applications, and there's the alarm bell up at the top with how many notifications are sitting waiting for you. So um, integrating a on-app way of viewing them as well. So again, same notifications, but being able to reveal them in multiple channels. So that's what
Yeah.
we'll attack. We'll attack that in a release, either 1 or 2 episodes of Cafe coming up. For me, I like the idea of making those actionable as well. So if somebody changes something and it requires your approval to do that, to have that be part of the notification, so you're looking at it on screen or on your email and being able to click and get to the spot that you need to do the work you need to do next. So I'm going to try and demonstrate that into it as well. One of the things that I've been working on is our communications, um, the ability to send out emails. We've long ago talked about the pattern. I called it queue email, but the idea that all emails go into a queue and then get sent. So rather than sending with a send email action, which is, certainly very easy to do, very common pattern for something simple, by putting them into a queue, you uh, meaning a data table that an entity that holds your emails, then you can have statuses and release emails on a schedule if something there's a record of the emails that have gone out. So when we make a horrendous mistake, and I'm think some of you have seen us do this. There was one particular project where we were sending notifications about, hey, your DNN version doesn't align with your Plantain app version. We sent out thousands of emails because we had a program, a implementation problem. So the idea that if emails go into a database before they get sent, then there's evidence exactly what did we do, what emails went out, and there's also the opportunity to catch it before you send them. You can turn off the sending portion of that, or hold them in a review state, and that's what we're working on now. So we generate all the emails. The emails are sitting in a queue but not sent, and then we can see, yep, that's right. Now we can release them. So that's the area that I've been working on these days is standardizing the way that we send emails in all cases, and now we're opening that up in our um, internal, so that instead of receiving emails from when we're trying to announce, for example, a version upgrade or a different email, that these DNN version things, and instead of each thing sending them directly, that they're all going in through this communications program, so they're all using the same mechanism, and then that lets us also standardize the unsubscribe. If you don't want to hear from us on a topic, you can unsubscribe from it. So that's what I've been working on. That spark anything with anybody, or uh, something that you'd be interested in seeing?
I would be interested in seeing that. It's, on how you're going to do that. And you mentioned getting a status of it. Is it the status that you sent it, or are you looking actually at status of how many people potentially opened it or something like that?
All of that and more. So when um, we definitely know what we've sent, and then um, we have access to bounce information, which I haven't wired in yet, but anything that bounces, we certainly don't want to keep sending. So that's another factor. We have wired in the ability to see if it was opened, at least if you allow us. Of course, browsers try to thwart that. Email clients try to thwart that, but um, we try to see if you open it. If you click a link, those are encoded, so we can know that you've clicked a link. So we're trying to get a lot of information, um, just so that we can understand how you engage with us, and also if we're sending to the wrong place, and as I say, standardizing unsubscribes. So
Yeah, that would be right. I have a project coming up for my homeowners association too, and it would their data is questionable, so those kind of details would be good to know if there was a system way to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would also be interested in that. I'm using that queue pattern for emails now, but getting to the next level of, integrating with the server and getting statuses back and things like that would be most helpful.
Great. I'll put that on the list.
Yeah, I'll chime in. I'm using that in several situations.
So, are you also using the queue email pattern? Is that what you're saying, Mark?
Yes, I am. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Were any of you the victims of receiving dozens of emails from us on the topic? This was several months back. I hate it when I'm involved in any project that spams people. So I apologize if you were impacted. Okay. I am going to call an early end unless somebody has a topic. I didn't get to pick out a playbook topic today, so although okay, now I remember one. I just added a suggestion to our low code playbook, wondering if any of you encounter any of this. But um, it, within our entities, it's very typical to have a status entity. So you'd have a customer, and you'd have a customer status entity, and maybe the status is that they're a prospect, a lead, a active customer, a inactive customer, that kind of thing. And when you relate to a status type table, the um, visually you see, when you're looking at the customer, you see what their status is, the name of the status, active customer, for example. But if you're working at it on the data level, the status is an integer. It's the record number of the status table. And one of the things that bugs me is that in code, when somebody moves from uh, a lead to a active customer, that there might be code in the buying logic that says, well, they bought something, so they're an active customer. I need to change their status to 3. And what I usually see is you get into that code and it says, partially update the customer record, set the customer status to 3. Well, what does that mean? 3. Um, So when I've designed systems in the past, I tend to use status names instead of record values, related record values. And I understand that's not terribly relational and comes with its own set of problems, but at least the status values are readable in code. They mean something to somebody, active versus 3. Um, but the plant and app pattern is to use status values. So I'm just advocating as a low code good practice to, um, in the same place that you're setting the customer status to 3, that you add a note to say 3 means active, so that you don't have to go off and look at the status table as following along behind some other developer, and you're looking at code that has this kind of magic integer that you have to go look at the status table to figure out what that means. So adding some notes, some internal documentation. Does that bother anybody else, or is that just me?
Yes,
Well, well, go ahead.
bothers me, and it's especially even worse when in systems that are now using GUIDs for that.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
I was
my
just
bad.
gonna say I'll agree with you because this kind of came out of a call Dale and I were having yesterday where we were like, what does this number here mean? And then you have to go look it up, and adding that note to tell somebody what the number means is really going to help in the future for somebody trying to figure it out.
Yes, and you might be able to remember half a dozen statuses, especially if they're integer numbers and you're using them all the time. But
Mhm.
GUIDs, that absolutely, that certainly, that just blows you out of the water. So, all right. Final thoughts, and then I'm going to call it to a close. We'll go into Afterglow. Anybody?
On your feature requests, you had one called Starter Plan. Have you seen any activity on that?
So I don't know whether you were here when we talked about it a week or two ago. Um, but I added that as kind of a conversation starter for this group. But um, one of our main objectives for version 1.27 is to release a starter plan. So there is uh, there is a starter plan in the works. If that was your question.
It was. That's great.
So I fully expect that when 127 comes out, and I really, really hope it doesn't take a year as we did for 126. It really should just be in the month or two range. But this is what we're one of the major objectives. We want to be able to sell a starter plan. So I think we provided a little bit more detail on that, and there's a Campfire one or two ago. So if you weren't here, you might look in the last couple and see what's there. I'd be happy to send you a note if you want where that is. But it's coming.
Oh, great. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to catch up from being gone from a couple weeks, so I will go watch that.
Yeah, you don't get credit if you don't read the materials. I'm teasing. All right. Thank you for spending the hour with us. There's been another episode of Low Code Campfire. We will do it again next week without Patrick. Patrick will be in an undisclosed location, hopefully enjoying himself.
Yes.
But I'll be here, and who knows, maybe I'll enlist Bogdan to come. It's been a while since he's been here. He always adds quite a bit when I like having a second chair, somebody to say, am I forgetting something? Anyway, so we'll do it again next week. Hang around for a few minutes if you like, and we'll go into our Afterglow segment. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dale, Patrick, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, all.